I want you to imagine just for a second that you're standing right in front of a giant stack of club speakers.
Oh, yeah, we all know that feeling.
Right. You can actually feel that massive rhythmic pulse of a techno or tech house track just vibrating right in your chest. It's massive, it's driving, and it sounds undeniably modern.
It really does. It's a very specific energy.
But what if I told you the secret ingredient creating that massive club-ready heartbeat is actually based on like a dusty piece of 1960s public address gear that was literally meant for church podiums?
I mean, it sounds completely absurd when you frame it like that.
It totally does.
But the foundations of modern heavy electronic music really are built on some very strange, very old architectural choices in audio gear.
Well, welcome to this deep dive. Today, we have a really fascinating stack of source material.
Yeah, this one is super interesting.
We're looking at a highly detailed 6-part professional mixing notebook. And this was prepared for a producer over at 786 Music, LLC.
Which is a great label, by the way.
Yeah, and the entire document is obsessively focused on mastering exactly one thing, which is the Soundtoys Devil-Loc plugin.
Just one plugin. It's amazing.
So our mission today is to decode how top-tier producers use this concept of intentional imperfection to create that professional, high-energy audio you hear in clubs. We're going to look at how they take something fundamentally broken and use it to engineer a perfect groove.
Yeah, and to even understand why a plugin like this exists on modern computers, we kind of have to look back at the physical hardware that inspired it.
Right, take us back.
So in the 1960s, the audio company Shure built a piece of hardware called the Level-Loc. Specifically, we're talking about the M62 and the M62V models.
Okay.
And its original purpose was incredibly unglamorous. It was literally just an automatic level control for public address systems.
So not for music studios at all?
Not even close. You would find these sitting in the racks at conferences, school assemblies, or, church podiums.
Yeah, and looking at the notes on the original hardware, there's no musical thinking here at all.
No.
It just has this simple rotary knob for distance settings.
Yes.
Like literally just far, medium, and near. It makes you wonder how something that basic even functions for music.
Well, the designers were trying to solve a very specific, annoying physical problem.
Which was?
Think about an amateur speaker at a podium, right? They might lean way back, mumble a sentence, and then suddenly lean right into the microphone and shout.
Oh, right. Driving the sound guy crazy.
Exactly. So to prevent the audience from being deafened by the shout or straining to hear the mumble, Shure designed what we call a brick wall limiter.
Let's actually define that really quickly for anyone who isn't an audio engineer.
Sure.
A brick wall limiter is essentially a digital or analog ceiling. You basically tell the machine, do not let the sound go above this volume no matter what.
Precisely. If the sound tries to go past that ceiling, the limiter absolutely slams it down.
Wow.
It's an extreme form of compression meant to keep a human voice perfectly steady, regardless of how close the person was to the mic. It was not meant to sound pretty. It was meant to be functional and, honestly, brutal.
Which brings us to a massive shift in the late 90s and early 2000s and the legend of a recording engineer named Tchad Blake.
Oh, yes, a legend.
The notebook explains that he discovered this mundane PA equipment had characteristics that made it absolutely perfect for music production.
Entirely by accident, too.
Right. He figured out that when you run a drum kit through a brick wall limiter, that extreme, with all of its gritty, gnarly distortion, it makes the drums sound impossibly large.
And we can look at the physics of why that happens. In a recording studio, a drum kit has a few loud hits, the transient strike of the stick on the skin.
Yeah.
And then a lot of very quiet room tone, the subtle reverberations of the sound bouncing off the studio wall.
Right, the natural echo.
Exactly. When you put that through the Shure Level-Loc, the limiter violently crushes the loud transient down to the ceiling, but then it pulls the quiet room reverberations all the way up.
So the background noise gets as loud as the drum hit.
Yes. The physical space around the drums suddenly sounds massive and aggressive. It completely changed how rock drums were mixed.
But there was a hardware problem, right? The original units were bulky and pretty rare.
Very rare.
Engineers were suddenly hunting for them in pawn shops and old churches, driving the used market prices up to between $200 and $400 for what was basically old conference junk.
It's wild.
Yeah.
But the software company Soundtoys saw that desperation around 2011. They realized engineers desperately wanted that specific Level-Loc character in their digital workstations.
Right.
But instead of trying to make a perfect clinical clone of the electrical circuit, they set out to capture its chaotic spirit.
They wanted the vibe, not just the math.
Exactly. They released a digital homage, initially as a free promotion, actually, and later very affordably, that boiled all that aggressive hardware down to a simple digital tool.
And this taps into something the Notes call the found gear movement, which is huge in techno and tech house.
Oh, massive.
It's a philosophy where producers intentionally use imperfect, destroyed gear. They specifically mention the thermionic culture vulture in the notes.
Yeah, the culture vulture.
Which is a boutique hardware compressor that costs upwards of $3,000, designed just for aggressive distortion.
That's right.
But here's where I have to push back a little bit.
Okay, lay it on me.
It's like finding a cheap old Polaroid camera that takes technically flawed pictures, but suddenly everyone wants that exact vintage aesthetic. Why didn't engineers just use standard, clean studio compressors? I mean, why go looking for the flaws?
Well, in genres like techno, sterile perfection is actually the enemy.
Really?
Yeah. If you use a perfectly clean, mathematically pristine compressor, your track might be technically flawless, but it'll be incredibly boring.
It won't have any character.
Exactly. It won't move you on a dance floor. Loudness, excitement, and energy in electronic music are achieved through coloration and artifacts. The distortion isn't a flaw. It's the vital tool used to create the perception of sheer power.
Okay, so I am looking at the interface of the Devil-Loc plugin in the notes, and honestly, coming from the perspective of standard studio gear, I'm kind of confused.
Does he do?
Well, standard compressors look like airplane dashboards. They have knobs for attack, release, ratio, threshold, makeup gain.
Right, tons of options.
But Soundtoys basically gives you two primary knobs, crush and crunch. How is taking away all that control a good thing for a professional producer?
It forces you to stop overthinking and use your ears instead of your eyes. The interface is a masterclass in radical simplicity. You aren't endlessly twiddling with attack times trying to calculate the perfect mathematical envelope. You just decide, I need this drum bus to sound aggressive, and you turn two knobs to get there.
Let's break those two knobs down then. First, you have sidechain.
Yep.
The notebook defines this as your compression amount. It creates that extreme brick wall effect from the original hardware. The higher you tune it, the more severe the limiting.
Exactly.
Then you have Creargen T8H. The notes say this controls both the makeup gain and the distortion.
And just as a quick reminder, because the crush knob is squashing the loudest parts of your audio down and making everything quieter.
Right, you lose volume.
Makeup gain is simply the volume boost you apply afterward to bring the overall level back up. Soundtoys tied that volume boost and the distortion into a single control.
So the louder you make it, the dirtier it gets.
Exactly.
If I can put this in an analogy, if this plugin is a suitcase, crush is how tightly you pack it until the seams are bursting.
Okay, I love that.
And crunch is how far you drag that suitcase behind your car down a gravel road.
That is a perfect analogy. And the physics behind that gravel road are deeply important to how we perceive sound.
How so?
Well, the notebook breaks down two distinct types of distortion happening within that crunch knob. At low crunch settings, around 1 or 2, you're generating harmonic distortion.
Okay.
Imagine harmonic distortion as a choir. You're adding new voices to your audio, but those voices are singing the exact same chords, just in higher or lower octaves.
So it blends in perfectly.
Right. It's mathematically related to your original signal, making a backline or a kick drum sound richer, warmer, and fatter.
But when you push that crunch up high, like to 4, 5, 6 or more, the notes say you cross over into intermodulation distortion.
Yeah, and to stick with the choir analogy, intermodulation distortion is like someone walking into that beautiful choir and just screaming completely random, out-of-key notes.
Oh, wow. So it's just chaos?
Total chaos. The plugin is literally forcing the sound waves to collide and create entirely new, chaotic frequencies that have no mathematical relationship to the original sound.
That sounds awful.
Well, out of context, maybe. But in a mix, it sounds intentionally destroyed, gritty, and full of those cool, lo-fi artifacts.
You know, the notebook makes a really critical distinction between Devil-Loc and another famous Soundtoys plugin called Decapitator.
Ah, yes. Decapitator is legendary.
Decapitator had 5 different styles, multiple controls, and producers use it to transparently add analog character or warm a sound up without ruining the dynamics.
Right.
So if Decapitator already adds beautiful musical warmth, Why do producers risk using Devil-Loc, which is literally designed to destroy?
Because producers choose Devil-Loc precisely because it does two radical things simultaneously. You are completely crushing the dynamics and adding aggressive coloration with one single move.
So it's the combo that matters.
Exactly. It combines the compression and the distortion into an inseparable chaotic event. It forces bold, intentional decisions in the sound design process that you just can't get by carefully layering a clean compressor with a clean distortion plugin.
All right, so the knobs are aggressively simple, but that creates a massive logical problem in my mind.
What's that?
If I am using this plugin on a drum loop with really fast kicks and then slow ringing cymbals, how does a plugin with zero timing controls know when to stop squashing? I mean, how does it know how fast to let go of the audio?
That brings us to the hidden genius of the original 1960s Shure hardware, which Soundtoys perfectly preserved.
Yeah.
The release time, which is how quickly the compressor stops squashing the sound after a loud peak, is not fixed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it reacts dynamically based entirely on the input level it is receiving.
The notes explain this. If you feed it a slow input signal, like the long decay of a reverb tail or a slow synthesizer pad, Devil-Loc reacts with a slow release. It lets the sound recover very gradually. But if you hit it with a fast input signal, like the sharp crack of a snare drum or the quick transient of a kick drum, it triggers a lightning fast release. It just snaps right back to full volume.
And the musical result of that hidden automatic behavior is profound. You see, a compressor with a fixed release time can sound incredibly robotic, treating every single sound exactly the same.
Yeah, totally flat.
But Devil-Loc's auto-release allows the kick drums to punch through with a tight, fast groove, while the sustained synth sounds around them breathe slowly. The plugin is automatically adapting to the tempo and feel of the music.
This also deeply affects sidechain compression, right?
Oh, massively.
For anyone who might not know, sidechaining is a technique where you tell the bass line to briefly duck out of the way every time the kick drum hits.
Yeah.
So the low frequencies don't clash and turn into mud.
Right. It creates space.
The notebook points out that without Devil-Loc, sidechaining feels really mechanical. Like the volume goes down, the volume goes up. But with Devil-Loc, the distortion artifacts are ducking proportionally with the volume.
Yes.
But I really have to ask, isn't pumping usually considered a rookie mixing mistake? Like, if you push a compressor too hard on a rock song, the whole track sounds like it's uncomfortably gasping for air. Why are electronic producers engineering this on purpose?
Well, in acoustic music, obvious pumping is absolutely a mistake. You generally want transparency. But let's look at the pumping science, the notebook details for techno.
Okay.
When you use Devil-Loc, it's not just the volume that's changing. Because the crunch knob is adding heavy distortion, those extra harmonics are also being compressed and released right alongside the volume.
Wait, let me make sure I'm fully grasping this. The sidechain isn't just turning the volume knob down. It's literally scrubbing the grit out of the sound on the downbeat and injecting it back in on the upbeat.
Exactly.
So the texture itself is breathing.
That is the exact mechanism. We call it harmonic modulation. Your ear doesn't just hear the volume dropping. It hears the entire texture, the grit, and the character of the sound shifting rhythmically with the beat.
That is fascinating.
Because the tonal character is physically moving in time with the track, the human brain interprets it as a musical driving groove rather than a mechanical volume error. The distortion becomes a rhythmic instrument itself.
So we have the theory down. We have this aggressive, auto-releasing, harmonic modulating beast of a plugin.
Yep.
The notebook details a 4-layer hierarchy they call the groovy but clean principle.
Sure.
But looking at this, I don't get how you even begin layering something this destructive. If you just crank Devil-Loc on your master output, it's going to sound like a garbage disposal.
Oh, completely. It would be a mess.
So walk me through how professionals actually apply this to a mix without turning the song into an unlistenable wall of mush.
Achieving that massive energy while keeping it pristine on a giant club sound system requires severe discipline. So layer 1 is subtle processing on individual tracks. Think like a solitary kick drum or a bass line. You use incredibly low settings here. Crush between 2 and 2.5, crunch around 1 to 1.5. You are barely touching the sound, just lightly tightening the individual elements.
That makes sense. Then we move to layer 2, which the notes call medium bus level processing. This seems to be where the actual magic happens.
It really is.
They use a specific template called 786M drum bus pump.
Right. You put this on the bus channel that groups all of the individual drums together. They set the crush to 4 and the crunch to 2.5.
So we're getting a bit more aggressive.
Exactly. This hits the threshold required to create that obvious harmonic modulation and pumping we just broke down. It glues the entire drum kit together so it feels like one cohesive, aggressive instrument playing in a single room.
Then we get to layer 3, which the notebook calls the secret weapon, parallel processing. They create an entirely separate duplicated drum track.
And they absolutely smash it. Crush is turned all the way up to 6, crunch is pushed to 3.5. It crosses over into that chaotic intermodulation distortion we talked about earlier. It is totally destroyed. But they only blend that destroyed track in via the fader at about 20% volume underneath the main clean drums.
So layer 3 is basically like making a lethally spicy chili oil.
I like where this is going.
You don't drink a bowl of it. You just drizzle 20% of it over your noodles to wake the whole dish up while keeping the original flavors intact.
Yes.
But why go through the technical hassle of routing a parallel track? Why not just put Devil-Loc on the main drum bus and find a middle ground with the knobs?
It comes down to the physics of a sound wave and preserving what we call the punch.
Okay, explain that.
The transient, the very first millisecond of a kick or a snare drum, is what gives the sound its physical impact. If you put heavy crush directly on your main drum bus, the compressor will bite down on that transient and flatten it. The punch is completely gone.
So the kick drum sounds loud, but it doesn't hit you in the chest anymore.
Exactly. By using parallel processing, your main drum bus stays dynamic, dry, and incredibly punchy. The parallel track is completely squashed, providing a bed of massive sustained excitement and loudness.
Oh, I see.
When you blend that 20% underneath, you trick the human ear. The listener gets to experience the sharp, uncompressed transients of the original drums while simultaneously feeling the massive, distorted energy of the crushed track. It is the only physical way to achieve both extreme loudness and dynamic punch at the exact same time.
That makes perfect sense. And just to finish out the hierarchy, layer 4 is the master bus, which the notes say is strictly for safety limiting.
Just a safety net, yeah.
Crush is set way down at 1, crunch is at 0. There's zero coloration happening. It's just acting as a digital feeling to catch any rogue audio spikes and prevent clipping before the track is finally exported.
The notebook also highlights a vital rule of thumb for this entire process, the barely noticeable test. When you bypass the plugin, the active version should just sound tighter and punchier. If it sounds obviously compressed and flattened, you've used too much. You really have to respect the layers.
Well, let's zoom out and summarize the journey we've just taken. We started with a piece of 1960s hardware designed for church podiums, a piece of gear completely ignored by the musical establishment at the time.
Yeah, literal conference room junk.
And we saw how the desire for its specific physical flaws led Soundtoys to reduce its chaotic analog circuit into just 2 radical digital knobs, crush and quench.
Right.
And we explored the underlying physics of how top-tier producers harness its bizarre auto-releasing quirks, blending harmonic and intermodulation distortion through parallel processing to literally engineer the thumping heartbeat of modern electronic music.
It really highlights how much of modern music production is actually about wrestling with technology. It's about finding a flaw, understanding the acoustic science behind that flaw, and then meticulously controlling it across a complex mixing hierarchy to create a very specific feeling of unbridled energy.
And here's why you, the listener, should care about this. Whether you're producing your own tracks in Logic Pro, prepping for a sound design meeting, or honestly just listening to your favorite tech house playlist at the gym, you now know that the immense driving energy you are feeling is not an accident. It's the result of carefully managed, intentional imperfection. The distortion is doing the heavy lifting to move you.
Absolutely. Once you understand the mechanism, it completely changes how you listen to a club track. You stop just hearing a beat and you start hearing the harmonic modulation in the sidechain. You can identify that gritty parallel layer hiding just beneath the clean kicks. You hear the intentionality behind the chaos.
I want to leave you with one final provocative thought based on something buried deep in the advanced section of this notebook.
Oh, the build-up trick.
Yeah. There's a note detailing how the producers use this setup during a build-up, that 10 section right before the massive drop of a dance song. They automate the volume fader of that heavily distorted parallel layer 3 track.
The chili oil layer.
Exactly. As the build-up progresses, they slowly push that fader from 10% up to 20%. Consider this. The next time you're listening to a massive dance track and you feel that incredible rush of emotion and hype right before the beat drops, What if that feeling isn't about the musical notes or the tempo at all?
It's a crazy thought.
What if that visceral rush of adrenaline you feel in your chest is actually being mathematically engineered by our producer, slowly injecting invisible intermodulation distortion directly into your ears right up until the moment the beat drops?
It really makes you question if we're reacting to the music itself or just the physics of the machine manipulating our hearing.
Something to think about next time you feel the bass.